Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Yes, back from Istanbul, back from that match, back from a defeat, a Tottenham Hotspur defeat, back from a city that I've never been to, and it's actually really beautiful. It's like chaotically beautiful. There's always something going on in your eye line somewhere. The roads are madness, the traffic's madness, even going on buses to the stadium. Obviously, I wasn't on the same buses as the fans, but I was going on just kind of the normal buses, and they drive an interesting way in the way they weave in and out of traffic. It's just that's kind of it. It's just beautiful and really lovely people everyone encountered. But obviously, we were there for the game. There were many Spurs fans making the trip. I saw plenty of them on the flight over. I saw plenty on the flight back today. All of us now are, operating 3 hours ahead of what it is now in the UK. So apologies if I start kind of nodding off. I'm sure many of you will anyway by the end of this video, because we're going to talk, well, just in general you might normally, but we're going to talk, of course, about a game that was a weird one. If ever a game kind of summed up or showcased one side that really had a point to prove and really wanted to show the world what, I guess, Turkish football is all about as well, after recent comments that we'll talk about, and another side that was a bit like, meh. And that was it. It was Spurs so had their one eye on Sunday, and not their one eye, one of their eyes. They're not the Cyclops. They had one eye on Sunday in Ipswich because obviously they arrived early this morning, 2.5 days until their next game. So Postecoglou very much was, I think, playing the percentages a little bit. And look, I don't want to use that as an excuse for the performance in any way, shape or form, because Spurs were absolutely architects of their own downfall for long periods. They were dreadful with the ball at times. And they were playing a Galatasaray team that had a fair bit of quality. There's so many players in that team. You're like, they used to play for him. They used to play for them. I don't want to say used to play for him. They used to play for them. Davinson Sanchez, of course, former Spurs defender. Victor Osimhen as well, Napoli on loan, one of the top strikers around. And just so many players. Icardi in there as well. And Yilmaz, who Spurs have been linked to, although interestingly, Postecoglou kind of denied any interest in the press conference ahead of the match. And yeah, they got plenty of quality to absolutely punish any silly little thing the Spurs did. Although saying that, they should have punished by more. It should have been an NFL score. It should have been a ridiculous score. Galatasaray had 28 shots on target. Sorry, 28 shots. I think they had 10 on target. Spurs had 5 shots, 3 on target. Look, we know where Spurs were coming into this game. I think we spoke about this in previous videos. They were coming into this game second in the Europa League, massive table thing. They'd already won the first 3 matches. They were in a very comfortable position. And I do believe, I don't know if he'd ever admit this publicly or not, because I don't know if he's that kind of guy. But look, despite his desire to win every single match, Postecoglou this is, and he was furious at times on the touchline. I was right above him. I was quite high above him, but not just like dangling Mission Impossible Tom Cruise style on a rope just above him. But I was high up in the press box looking down upon him, and I could see how furious he was at times. So he was not like, well, and just kind of walking off and, having a sandwich or anything. He was annoyed, but I kind of feel like in the grand scheme of things, it probably is going to be a result that he's not going to lose too much sleep over. Because if there was any game in this little run right now that you could probably say, okay, well, that's not the be-all and end-all. It is this game. And again, I don't want to excuse it. We're going to talk about some of the real negative stuff about aspects of the performance as well. So don't worry, they're not getting off easy. And Postecoglou's not getting off easy either. Obviously he made the decision with the team selection and everything, so he's got to accept that when the defeat happens. Although I do think some of the passing was just horrendous. And yeah, he made 7 changes to starting lineup. So it was all about making sure that there were kind of fresh players for Sunday as well, which, let's be honest, Spurs have only recorded back-to-back wins in the Premier League once, actually, this season. Was it Brentford and Man U? I think they were the only 2 back-to-back. So, he wants to win in the Premier League. And, of course, there is a chance, isn't there, is there a chance to go up to 3rd, I think? I don't, obviously, very dependent on results, I think. Of course it must be. But anyway, so, yeah, that is if you're going to ask which is the priority game of these 3 days or so, it's the Ipswich game. It is. And again, that's not to do down the performance, and we are going to go into it in detail. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter, because it did, and especially mattered for those fans that are heading out over there. Speaking to a number of them afterwards about the performance, and they weren't happy, and understandably so. When you've paid all your money to go out there, weirdly, Spurs could have still drawn the game. They really didn't. It was a bit like, in that respect, the game away at the Amex last season, when Spurs somehow had chances to come back and equalise, even though they didn't deserve to whatsoever. But if you want proof, I think that Postecoglou himself even was thinking, yeah, Sunday's the one. It was the halftime subs. It was. Because we were watching, I could see Bentancur warming up at the break. I couldn't see Kulusevski warming up, but we knew Bentancur was warming up. And the absolute widespread opinion in the press box was Lucas Berval's coming off. Because we'll talk about Lucas in a little bit. He didn't have a good night. And it just seemed the logical thing in terms of tactically that you would bring on Bentancur into there, and you just have someone maybe that could deal with the occasion a little bit better, a little bit more experience, a lot more experience. 3-time Serie A winner, and then the board went up, and it's Bentancur and Kulusevski coming on, Son and Johnson coming off, and in that moment, you knew he was looking to Sunday. It was quite interesting because social media went mad, and there was a lot of people going like, "That's tactic. That's the wrong decision. That doesn't make any sense." And it's a bit like, you know what he's doing. He's not like given up on the game or anything, but he's very much said, I need Son and Johnson fresh for Sunday. They're going to presumably start on Sunday. And we kind of now know after his press conference today as well that Timo Werner and Mikey Moore are not going to be available for the weekend as well. So it kind of needs must. He needs his only kind of real fit. I mean, you've got no Richarlison either, have you? So, or Odegaard. So they kind of are the only two wingers unless you're playing Kulusevski up there right now. So as much as it pains me, I get it. I get why he made that sub, because otherwise Sunday's going to be a bit of an issue. And that is the one that, if I could pick one to win, it would be that one. Of course, I'd want to win both, but you know what I mean. And he would say exactly the same. But I would pretty much be near certain that had Mikey Moore, who, if you're not aware, had a virus, Timo Werner, it's a groin complaint that he's been carrying a little while. I wonder if it's, what was the game where he went down in? Was it City? I think it was City, wasn't it, when he went down and had to come off? I feel like he's done that recently as well. There was another game that's absolutely gone out of my head. Was it Coventry, perhaps? When it came off and everyone expected him to be out for ages and he was back the next game. I wonder if that's this groin issue and whether it's been something that's been kind of persistent over the weeks and months. But yeah, I think if Werner and Moore had been fit, I pretty much guarantee at least one of them would have started over Son and Johnson. I'd probably go as far to say I wouldn't be shocked if both of them had started instead of those two. And that was kind of the way I think they were seeing this game. And look, Galatasaray knew that Spurs were rotating. The manager said before, Okan Buruk, and then he said after the game, of course, the Tottenham team is one of the best teams in the Premier League. They have certain players on their side. And when we take a look at it, they didn't play with their best squad they could have created. But very important players they have, and we have seen this. I'm guessing that's the translation that's come through. It maybe sounds slightly more like Yoda speaking. And look, I don't want to take anything away from Galatasaray, because especially first half, they were excellent. They were really good. Second half, they really got outplayed for kind of various periods by 10-men Tottenham. But first half, and I think their manager was kind of quite annoyed about that as well, in the way they played. But first half, they were very good. The fans, it was an amazing atmosphere and experience. It's called Rams Park. It used to be, I think it was built in 2017, I think. There was a previous stadium, which I think was the one, the whole Welcome to Hell thing that Man United had scarily 30-something years ago, 31 years ago, I think that is now. I was trying to think, because I was prepared before the game. Someone, another reporter who'd covered a couple of matches in Turkey, had said to me, they're the noisiest matches he'd ever reported on. I think it's definitely got to be up there. It was very noisy throughout. I feel like I've been to some Italian games, strangely enough, which has been very loud. What was the other one? There was one that was really disappointing and one that was really met the expectations. I feel like the two I'm thinking of are Nicosia and Belgrade, and I can't remember which way round they were. One of them met the expectations and one of them wasn't that as loud as I expected. Really helpful for you there. But Rams Park was. They were so noisy. We had the edge of the press box had a load of fans that had kind of congregated slightly around some of the desks because there were some empty seats on the end. They were banging it. My laptop was like blah, 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 constantly jumping up and down. I don't know why it sounded like it was underwater. But yeah, they just kept banging it. It's fine. It's all part of the experience. It's, to be fair, actually, when talking about noise, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, when it gets going, can be noisy. George Sessions from PA and I were talking about this. So last night or this morning, getting to the airport, it was definitely the Palace game when it opened. There were moments when the players admitted afterwards they couldn't even hear each other on the pitch. Definitely the North London derby under Conte, that was loud. City in the Champions League was loud. I was told that the other night against City while I was away was pretty loud as well. So yeah, that's up there. But is what I would say, and with no disrespect to Spurs fans, including myself, it's probably not a sustained, constant noise. Whereas, apart from maybe that Arsenal game, that was near sustained noise. But that the noise that they make, the Galatasaray fans and Turkish fans, I think in general, and Besiktas and all that. Fenerbahce, I don't know too much about Besiktas. They always talk about having this kind of loud support as well, but it is just a constant kind of thrum. It's just constant noise. It's there, and whistles and boos whenever the Spurs players have the ball. And I was there as they came out for the warm up, and just the noise that greets them. It's just like it is a big thing for these players, and we'll talk about the young players and which ones dealt with it, which ones didn't, and all of them I think will benefit in the long term from it. I didn't realise, I'd completely missed this, that it kind of was maybe, well, no, because it was a while in the past, but Timo Werner, I didn't realise back when he was 21 for RB Leipzig, was playing in a game in Turkey. I think it was Besiktas, and it was so noisy that he was on the pitch kind of covering his ears like this, really struggling with it, and actually asked to be taken off, which he was. I think Ralf Hasenhüttl was the manager back then of Leipzig. And it turned out it wasn't that just like, it's so noisy my ears hurt. I think there was something, his equilibrium had been messed up by the flight or something, because it actually affected him for a few weeks later. He couldn't then play games. But yeah, it just shows you that kind of anything can happen in these games. Galatasaray fans set the Guinness World Record. And do you know what? My taxi driver this morning taking me to the airport told me this, so I looked it up and he was spot on. Galatasaray fans set the Guinness World Record back in 2011 for the loudest crowd roar at a sports stadium. And yeah, it was noisy. It was. And I think there's this whole added impetus that a certain Jose Mourinho has added, kind of stoked up the fire, as it were. I don't know if you've seen it, but obviously Jose is the manager of Fenerbahce now, second in the league to Galatasaray. Jose is doing what Jose does, when them against us kind of thing. When things don't go his way, then it's everyone else's fault and everything's wrong, the system's broken and all of that. That's what he does at every club pretty much. But then he kind of went on this real 8-minute rant about Turkish football with the words which, will sting, I think, for people in Turkish football, of nobody abroad wants to watch the Turkish league. And this was the first time that Galatasaray had played since he said that. And, coming up against an English side and a Premier League side, it's going to have fired them up. It is to kind of be better, and not better, but, put on a show. Burak, the Galatasaray boss, he kind of dismissed what Mourinho said, but he did admit we are representing Turkish football. We need to be competing well. We have to show ourselves very well in Europe, and we need to compete in Turkey. We cannot reduce the value of Turkish football. We cannot gain anything from that. But winning this type of game, we're adding value to Turkish football, and we have seen this clearly. So thanks, Jose. Thanks for firing them up that little bit more. The team talk that nobody needed or wanted from the Tottenham side of things. And yeah, Spurs had to match their intensity. That was what they needed to do. And Spurs, I think, Galatasaray had a lot of quality going forward, but maybe, as I think we saw as the second half wore on, maybe not as much quality at the other end of the pitch. And that was Spurs' chance to kind of get in and between and around. And there were gaps to profit from. We saw it with Will Lankshear's goal, which I'm so delighted for him and so gutted for what happened afterwards. And also when they had 10 men. They were cutting them apart with a man less, or man fewer. So it does kind of show you that they were there to be got at. However, Spurs' passing was so abysmal at times, and sometimes not even under pressure. I think just because of the noise in the stadium, they just messed it up, and they kept inviting Galatasaray back on them, and too many players just panicked when they didn't really need to. And this was another one of those games where I just don't think enough of the leaders kind of stepped up and said, "Lads, just calm down. Let's." This is, we've been here, done this, some of us, and we can tell you it's not as bad as it seems and stuff like that. No one was really, I don't think you could say all of that when you could probably barely hear each other, but, at certain points, just gathering the team and trying to convey that message, or just leading by example, I suppose. The opening goal was brilliant. The opening goal, I've seen people trying to blame people for it. I just think you have to accept it. It's an amazing finish. Yunus Akgün, he catches it so beautifully on the half volley outside the box. It just flies into that top right corner. I saw someone trying to claim that Forster it went through his hands. I think every angle I've seen, and from what I saw in the moment, that's just a brilliant finish. You just kind of hold your hands up and just say, Fair enough. That was pretty cool. Vicario, who was on the bench, came running out to the edge of the touchline after that goal, and I think that's probably what he was saying, something like that. He was shouting across at the defence, presumably, I'm guessing, just saying along the lines of, just kind of reset. There's nothing you can do about that. And they did to a degree. They were still obviously vulnerable because of their appalling passing. But 18 minutes in, first bit of real quality they probably showed. Archie Gray, it's just amazing that he's only 18 when you sometimes think about kind of the way he plays in these games, in these environments. He had this little interchange with Sonny. Sonny got tackled, the ball came out, Gray took it, and I thought it was really brave actually, because the easy, safe pass was back to Sonny, who was then, I think his man had slightly stepped off him, so he could have knocked it back to Sonny. But instead, he cut inside, drove on with real purpose, and he just picked out this beautiful pass. Absolutely delicious curling pass into Brennan Johnson's run. Brennan Johnson then also does very well, but it was just the angle and it was like a perfect golf shot that just exactly hits the mark where you want it to. And Brennan Johnson just cushions it across to Will Lankshear running in to smash into the net. So happy for him. Obviously, we kind of try to pay attention as much as we can to the academy in these videos, and obviously I cover as many of the games as I can. Not as many as I want to, absolutely, because they kind of clash a lot with first team things, and as in terms of writing up about first team things. I've interviewed Will once or twice. He's a lovely lad, and he's really got something about him and the physicality, I think, to become a Premier League, or certainly a very high level striker. Whether it's in the Football League, whether it's in the Premier League, we'll see. I guess that's probably down to him, and also injuries, which do their thing, don't they? But just one of those moments where you're just so delighted to see him score. It's just got that. It just kind of, I don't know. Look, he's not. The fans are saying he's one of our own. Kind of, in terms of he's come through the academy in recent years, but he definitely obviously came across from Sheffield United. I think it was £2 million deal, something like that, reported at the time. I think pre that he was Arsenal in their academy, because straight after the game you get all like they used to do with Harry Kane, you get Arsenal fans like jumping in. I've never understood that. It's a bit like, why are you delighting in the fact that you made a mistake and let someone go who's quite good? Obviously, with Kane, it was amazing. With Will Lankshear, we're yet to see how good he's going to become. But I've never understood that logic. Almost as if like, nah, he's one of ours. So, well, you should have kept him then. But hey, that's the internet. So yeah, brilliant moment. Will Lankshear scores. And it was a nice finish as well because I watched that one back and it actually bounces right in front of him. You know, other players might have skied that or just messed up the shot, bobbled it, and yeah, he did well running straight onto it. But it was a beautiful ball from Archie Gray and then also from Brennan Johnson. Didn't last long. It didn't. Of course, it was just all a bit of a mess at what came next. We were kind of watching quite closely this one because we were starting to suspect that Lucas Berreval wasn't having the greatest game by that point. He looked a bit affected by the atmosphere. He's a bit hesitant in his passing. He was either giving it away or just making heavy touches or just not generally being strong on the ball. And so we were kind of keeping a bit of an eye on him, hoping, of course, that he was going to turn it around. And then he has this really straight, clear ball that he could have just played, 6-8 feet in front of him to James Maddison, who was around the centre circle, I think, absolutely free. For some unknown reason, he turned away from that Berreval, and then I think he got himself under pressure. I'm trying to remember it now. Played it back to Davies. Sorry, I've always been. I'm so used to years of saying Ben Davies, and everyone always points out to me, technically it's Ben Davis, even though it's spelled like Davies. And Davis, I also think looking back, he had a couple of options on his left. I don't know why Davis passed it across, but he did to Dragusin. But it still was a ball that should have been dealt with better. And then, Radu Dragusin lets it run across himself and runs into not one but two Galatasaray players, and it's passed through to Osimhen, and he pokes it home. Then he gets another. He missed a lot of chances, Osimhen, but the ball for his second goal was beautiful. Dries Mertens, absolutely lovely, deep curling ball in between Porro and Dragusin, and all Osimhen had to do really was guide it towards goal, which he did well with his side foot. He's got a special side foot with the side foot of his foot. You can tell I'm 3 hours ahead, so I'm flagging a little bit. And Galatasaray just kept coming, waves and waves of attacks. And although I'm going to criticise him a little bit later, but also talk about some of the good stuff he did, Fraser Forster did make save after save. He denied Osimhen twice from 1v1 situations. He had one really powerful shot, I think it was from Akgun, that he absolutely caught flush, and Forster pushed it away. It was really good reflexes. Like I said, in all 28 shots from Galatasaray. And it wasn't going badly enough. Then Will Lankshear had his moment when I was just up in the press box going, don't do it, don't do it. Because it's such a, and it's not just because he's young. I've seen so many players do this, and we've probably all done it. Any of us that play football at low levels, even if it's just like a five-a-side, where you lose the ball, you think you should have got a foul, and then you go off and you kind of a bit overzealous, let's say, in trying to get the ball back, and you end up just fouling the other person. We see it week in, week out in Premier League games, where a foul isn't given and seconds later the aggrieved player or someone else who's annoyed as a teammate gives away a foul, and then it makes it even more annoying because you conceded a foul when you should have had one in the first place. And so the moment that Gabriel Serra went down, did all the rolling about on the floor, the crowd went mad, and the referee, you could just see him going to his pocket and said, no, he's already got a yellow, because he got a very soft yellow card for catching someone with his arm, I think it was, as going up for a header. So he was so gutted. I felt so sorry for him. But, as it were, weirdly, Spurs played better with 10 men, which had a bit of shift in personnel. And Dominic Solanke came on and scored a beautiful goal. Really nice kind of dragged back heel flick into the net from Kulusevski. Played in Porro. Porro drove the ball low, and Solanke flicked it in really nicely. So back-to-back goals for him. And actually, like I said earlier, Spurs could have equalised. Kulusevski, as the keeper came sprinting out, made a header that dropped right over Kulusevski, and we all thought, if there's one player I wouldn't mind it going to, it's Kulusevski. And he just kind of fluffed the shot back. It was like it would have lobbed over his head and gone in, but it was like well wide. Had they got a point from the game, I think that would have been just rewards for the 10 men. It would not have been a fair result for Tottenham or Galatasaray, though, overall, because Galatasaray should have walked away with it. I asked Postecoglou about it straight after the game, and he said, obviously disappointing result. First half wasn't great. We just didn't handle things well at all, particularly with the ball, just really wasteful and gave it away too many times unnecessarily. That allows them to get a foothold in the areas that they're good at. They got some good players in the front third, and we just allowed that to happen way too often and ultimately paid a price for it, because we always finish strongly, and I knew we would in the second half. Obviously, going down to 10 men didn't help, but even with 10 men, I thought we probably played the best football. We did all game, and I disagree with that, and got our second goal. Had some opportunities to get a third there, but I thought we were looking the better side. So disappointing outcome, unfortunately brought on by a disappointing first half. I don't know if they played the best football all game. I think that was a little bit of an exaggeration, but they definitely had some nice little moments. I actually thought the possession would be way more loaded to Galatasaray than it was, but it was something like 56% they had, I think. But Ben Davies spoke about the game after as well. He said it was a tough game, especially in the first half. Our mistakes were our biggest downfall. We need to handle the atmosphere a bit better than we did in the first half, because by the end of the game, even with 10 men, we were probably the only team really pushing for it. We always felt we had a pretty good chance if we kept pushing, but we probably left ourselves a little bit too much to do. Like I said, if there was one game they were going to lose this week, this probably would be the one of the three this week that you would have picked, but that doesn't make it acceptable or any better, especially, like I say, for those who made the trek all the way over to Turkey. This game, in a way, kind of had a tale of three teenagers, didn't it? Postecoglou's been doing this pretty much throughout the Europa League of giving the two teenage summer signings their starts in this competition on the whole. I think Gray started everyone. I feel like, has Berreval started everyone? I feel like there's one he didn't start. And obviously, against Karabag, he came off very early, didn't he, because of Dragusin's sending off. And it's had two 18-year-olds and a 19-year-old in Will Lankshear on the pitch. So again, kind of showing that this isn't like, wasn't going for it, but he was trying to give them. I mean, these players have been in the 3 wins before. This obviously was the toughest of the bunch. The pick of the bunch was Archie Gray for me. Aside from that beautiful ball for the early equaliser, I just felt like he was one of the few that wasn't that intimidated by the atmosphere. Had some nice touches, kept trying to get up the pitch, kept trying to get round his man, and he was taking risks rather than hiding from the ball. I don't know whether that's because, last year he was playing playoff matches, played at Wembley, didn't he, as well? Whether it's just because Ellen Road's a pretty noisy place with big expectations, or it could just be in the blood. The Gray football dynasty that family's got. But whatever it was, he didn't seem fazed by it all, which is a big thing. And it's big for Spurs and big for Postecoglou going forward, knowing that he can do that. And look, he's used him everywhere. He's absolutely getting his money's worth out of Archie Gray. Right back, left back, centre back, midfield in pre-season. He actually really hasn't played there in the actual competitive games. And I think, look, I want to see him in the midfield at some point, but bearing in mind that's a congested area right now, it's quite a big pat on the back for him. I think that Postecoglou trusts him, first and foremost, to play wherever he wants him to play, but also, secondly, that he's trying to get him minutes everywhere he possibly can, whether it's on the left or not. Obviously, we can keep going back to the Jed Spence decision with the Europa League squad as much as we like, and he would be playing left back or right back in these games. I mean, it may well be that it would be Spence and Gray, to be honest, as the fullbacks in these games, to give both Udogie and Porro a rest. But Archie Gray's getting a lot of game time, and it's only going to help him. Postecoglou keeps making this point that playing in all these different positions is giving him these unique kind of views and ideas of different areas of the pitch and what to do and how to play, and he's teaching him kind of defensive aspects of his game as well, which, let's say he becomes a number 6, having spent time defending as a fullback, be brilliant for him. If he becomes a number 8, the constant raiding that you have to do as a Postecoglou inverted fullback, it's all going to lend itself to benefiting when he plays as an 8 as well. Look, he's not a natural fullback by any stretch of the imagination, and he's playing even on his weak side in playing as a left back as well. He's only in the start of the second season where he's attempted playing as a fullback, and he is going to get beaten by tricky, fast wingers. That's just going to happen because the best fullbacks are the ones that either have got a lot of pace to deal with that, or they've got a lot of experience where they've kind of understood how to shepherd someone like that into spaces where they're not as dangerous. And that's the kind of thing that if he plays more games as fullback, he's going to learn. But what the biggest thing I think I noticed, which you can maybe tell is the difference between Gray and Berval, is that Gray's had this year in the Championship, and you cannot underestimate what a tough, fast, demanding, physical league the Championship is. And he's played sort of 50, 52 games in it. That has almost aged him far more than Berval. He's having interviewed them both kind of in the flesh and a couple of times and kind of been right there up close and personal in front of them. And you can see Archie Gray he's a tall guy, but he's also kind of, it's got a bit of muscle to him as well. Whereas Lucas Berval is also tall, but he doesn't kind of have that, how do I put this, kind of mass? I don't know. What's the best way to put it? Muscle mass, I guess, is the way to put it, that strength. And look, he's got bundles of talent. Berval's just going to be an incredible player as he gets older. But physically, I don't think he's anywhere near where Gray is. You watch Gray going in for a challenge and he kind of bang, the two players go together. You see Berval going to a challenge and most of the time Berval bounces off the opposition player. That's all going to come. That's all going to come. He just, so many young, he's only 18. He's going to, the old cliche, he's going to grow into his body, isn't he? He's going to get bigger and stronger. And I also feel like as games stretch on that he started right now, he's tiring, not only physically, but mentally, and his decision-making is worse and worse as it goes on. The pace of the game, of course, it's a big step up for the Allsvenskan. We've no disrespect to Swedish football, but, this kind of football and it's kind of, last night's was quite comparable at times to the Premier League because it was so fast paced in that first half, and actually maybe that's a part of what happened in the second half, is that Galatasaray were playing at such a high intensity that actually they tired slightly in the second half, which kind of helped Spurs with their 10 men. But yeah, for Berval, it's the pace means that he's not making quick decisions with his passing. He's hesitating, just even at that level. If you hesitate for a split second, it's gone. Even like the pass to Maddison, which was on, and he kind of hesitated, changed his mind, whatever he did, and then moments later, he's kind of created a scenario in a way where the other team have gone away and then they've ended up scoring. And I get the impression that's something in training as well, that it's just ironing it out of him, just not taking that extra touch, not taking that little bit longer to think about it. Just play the ball. And that's the Postecoglou way, isn't it? It's non-stop. It's quickly getting the ball forward. And as soon as he gets that, the better and better he'll come, because he's got all the talent in the world. This is a player that, Spurs beat Barcelona to get. I saw the usual overreactions on Twitter after his performance, and it's like, he's going to be terrific. He just needs a bit of time. We always said this at the start, that he was going to be the one that would probably need more time because he's coming from such a different league and level. Whereas with Gray, he's more ready-made, and Odegaard's only 19. Again, he's played in the English game as well, and you can't underestimate just what that does for a player, how important that's going to be. So it's a bit like when Luka Vuskovic arrives next year. He's looked great in other leagues, but he's going to take time to adjust. Even though he's a big lad, he's going to take time to adjust as well. And the same with Heung-min as well. It's going to be such a different experience for them. Once in a while you get someone that absolutely just completely adapts, and you're kind of like, what? How did that happen? But that's probably definitely the exception rather than the norm. And I think, like I said earlier, I think what said everything about the game was the fact that Berval didn't come off at half-time. If Spurs were desperate to win that game, unfortunately, I think he would have got hooked at half-time, and I think you would have seen whether it be Bentancur, Sarr, Kulusevski, whoever come on, I think that's what would have happened. But it kind of showed that Postecoglou was like, okay, well, there's less risk in this scenario, in this game. If we lose, we lose. If we draw, we draw. Let's let these kind of young players get the experience of what it's going to be like out there, and it'll only serve them well in the long term, and Spurs as a byproduct. And that's what he did. And Maddison kind of pushed onto a further forward role. And yeah, we'll see what it does for Berval. I think hopefully it'll benefit him in the long run. And of course, the third member of the trio was Will Lankshear. It was ironic as well that his kind of second start and his first goal would come up against mostly battling against Davinson Sanchez. And we know with Big Dav, where he's going to excel is pace and strength. So he must be very difficult for someone like Will, who is probably a bit more of a target man, hold up kind of number 9 type, to be up against that kind of player. He would have been absolutely shattered even by the time he kind of came off when he had to. He had the goal, which, like I said, was a lovely finish. There was another little moment. I was trying to remember who he linked up with now. I can't remember. It might have been Maddison. Or it might have been... I can't remember. The ball came from the left. And he took a little touch, and it might have actually been Berval now, thinking about it. I can't remember. But anyway, he had a shot, was low, and it kind of just didn't have enough on it so that the keeper could kind of fall on it quite comfortably. But then we might have heard Indy barking in the background there. He's downstairs with the girls. Yeah, it's... yeah, it's thrown me off there, I was about to say. Regardless of the red card, his goal, Will Lankshear, and what he did, it's a massive tip of the hat to the academy. It is. And all those people have worked so hard for these players, whether that's Stuart Lewis in the under-18s, whether that's Wayne Burnett in the under-21s, of course their coaches as well, Bradley Allen in the under-18s, that's kind of got them to this stage, and they'll be so proud of kind of watching him do that as well. And not only him, but on the bench as well, we had Alfie Dorrington, Dante Casanova, Callum Olisese, and also Luca Williams-Barnett, who, oh my goodness, if you ever want to feel old, report on a player who was born in late 2008, and you're just like, oh my goodness. So Luca Williams-Barnett only turned 16 last month. He technically had to ask for time off school to play or be involved in Spurs squad to go to Turkey. That's how young he is. He's a terrific young talent. He's got something like, it's 11 in goal involvements in 7 games for the under-18s. And don't forget, he's only just stopped being 15. He played mostly as a left winger last season. This season is kind of playing a bit more of a like a Maddison kind of role, like a number 10 coming in off the left. It's more like an 8/10 role, but not your traditional kind of number 10 behind the strikers. More like a bit of an inverted winger, as it were. And yeah, terrific young talent. Still got a way to go, but I mean, what a big lift for him to already be on the bench, involved in Tottenham Hotspur Europa League game. It's great for him, and it's a big pat on the back for everything he's doing, and the academy coaches are doing. And also, it's kind of a bit, because you're going to have the same thing with him as you had with Mikey Moore, that little bit of, sign a contract, please. And all of this sort of stuff is only going to help him believe that his future is going to be at Spurs. And look, there's a long road ahead. He's a very talented young man, but there's so much at this point ahead for young players. They've got to keep working hard, and there's injuries that come. But at the moment, he's very highly thought of. And as you can see, just having turned 16 and he's on the bench. Amazing. But yeah, so even Lankshear's red card won't have soured the pride, I think, of the academy. He was so devastated. I'm just watching his face as he processed what was happening. And it was like watching the other players react to it as well. Basuma sprinted across the pitch, had a massive go at the referee. I thought he was going to get himself booked as well. He was so angry that the initial foul wasn't given on Lankshear. And then I thought it was pretty cool was Pedro Porro sprinted over as Lankshear was just going down about to go down the tunnel, and he sprinted over just over the touchline and like whacked him on the back as if so, look, don't worry, kind of thing. We got you. This happens, kind of thing. And Ben Davies spoke about him after. He said, unfortunately for Will, it is tough and these things happen, but he'll learn from that. Look, it's pretty devastating there, but it's up to us to help him through it now. It was a valiant fight in the end, but it's not quite enough. And he's gutted in there. He feels like he's probably let the team down, but it's just part and parcel of football. Every game is different. Every circumstance is different. And tonight when he went off, we went down to 10 men and we had to work hard. It's one of those things. The game is done now and he will learn from that for sure. Postecoglou was asked about Will Lankshear after the game, and he kind of used it to speak about all the three teenagers. He said, Will took his goal well. He worked hard for the team. Obviously, he hasn't had a lot of experience at senior football, so he would have learned a lot today. The red card, it was a bit of over-enthusiasm in that moment to give away a foul, but he'll learn from that. And the same with Lucas here, giving him an understanding of the levels here. It's not easy when you're playing away in Europe. You can only allow them to learn that by exposing them to it. I thought Archie was great. It was a tough game for us defensively at different times, but I think we'll get so much growth out of him because he's not playing in his position. I guess for three teenagers in the starting lineup, I think they'll learn a lot from it and hopefully it helps with their development. So yeah, excuse me, he did kind of offer up about Lucas without us mentioning anything anywhere. Or anything about him. So he clearly kind of could tell that it wasn't, it was a big leap for him last night. And and obviously he loves Archie Gray. You can tell. I mean, he really likes all of them. But you can tell with Archie Gray, I think he feels that like I say, he just trusts him anywhere. I don't think it's going to be long before we're seeing him in midfield. I hope it's sooner rather than later. I know, look, the midfield, Bentancur, Kulusevski and Sarr is working very well right now. We're probably going to see that again on Sunday. And we'll talk about all three of them and their impact in the second half last night. But I'd love to see Archie Gray get a go at some point, whether it's as a 6 or even just as an 8, because I think he'll be able to do both really well. He's just that adaptable. His technique is fantastic. It's so good. And his football brain as well. It's terrific. It's like Postecoglou said, it's an educational night for all of them, and the young subs to be in that kind of environment. The next time now they play in that, it's not going to phase as much, or they may find that nothing compares to that, and it was that loud for them. Who else? Radu Dragusin. We're not hearing from his very noisy agent, are we, at the moment? You've got to remember that Radu Dragusin is only 22. He is so young. He's only 3 years older than Will Lankshear. He is very, very young. Another night another player that's got to learn from last night, I feel, and he's been good recent games. We shouldn't be making out that Dragusin's a bad defender, as is always the way, isn't it? After a bad performance, they're suddenly the worst thing in the world. He's been very good against City and Villa. He came in for Van der Ven, both those games. He started both games. And he's been very good. Fitted in really well, and we've all been going to talk about how well he's doing. So yeah, sometimes you have nights like that as a young player. And we've said this before about a young team. You're going to have inconsistent performances. You're going to have moments where they don't play as well, and he just looked nervy. And this is a guy that played at the Euros, and he big performances on the big stage, but something about the atmosphere seemed to get to him as well. He'd been really growing in confidence in his passing. We spoke about this in the last video. His passing when faced by the press had been really good, not us, the actual pressing on the pitch. And I just felt last night he went back a couple of steps. He was making some really nervy passes that weren't reaching their targets. The second goal, that's just kind of poor awareness of what's around you. The second goal got between him and Porro. Probably both their faults in a moment like that, where it's communication or one of them making the move. There's plenty to really like about Dragusin's game. He's big, he's strong. He's not slow. It's just everyone looks slow in comparison to Mickey van der Ven. And he's brilliant in the air. That's a real kind of strength for Spurs when he's there. And I think we'll see that come into play at the other end of the pitch as well. I think he's going to end up scoring a fair few goals from set pieces as well for Spurs. Maybe it starts on Sunday. That would be great. But yeah, it's just, as with most young players and young defenders especially, it's about awareness and anticipation. They're the two things that really they need to work on. Technique for him, I think, is going to be continue to be refined. In Serie A, that was not being asked of him in his team. You know, it's Genoa, wasn't it? And it was Genoa, wasn't it? You know, so I've got to check now. It's one of those moments where I'm getting tired and I say silly things, and you're all probably saying it was Genoa. You don't have to look it up, but I need to because for my own sanity. It was Genoa. Of course, it was Genoa. Sorry for that little interlude. And yeah, he wouldn't have had to use that kind of fast passing around the press there as much. You know, it would have been a different kind of football. So it's a kind of something he's having to learn at Spurs, and he kind of was getting to grips with it. But yes, yeah, a little bit of a couple of steps back last night, but I presume he'll play again on Sunday. I think Aaron said today at the press conference, I was at the airport, I think, as it started. Going out, that was. Coming back in Turkey. Sorry, my words aren't making sense now. I think he said Romero is still a possibility. I think they're going to look at him maybe in training. He's still kind of referring to, I think, as a foot injury, whereas reports from Argentina were saying it was a toe ligament injury. I guess if Romero starts, he could go either way, really. He could go with Dragusin to keep giving him minutes, to kind of show his faith in him, or he could go with Davies as the kind of the balance with the left footer. But yeah, I think Ben Davies I thought was all right last night. I didn't feel there was too much you could kind of throw at him in terms of not playing particularly well. It's the more experience of the two, and I thought he did fine. He's always going to get beaten by pace at times, just because that's not his thing. But not too much that I can remember really got down his side. Him and Gray probably dealt with much that kind of. Even Mertens' cross was just brilliant, and it was from quite deep. It was far back. The odd moment that players got through, but I kind of felt more the danger was on the other side. I was saying this in the press box. I do feel like we've seen that goal too many times, where someone at the back post, the back left post, if you're looking at Spurs' goal, there's too many times people are getting in there to score. It doesn't feel like it's so much happening on the other side. So yeah, other than really the pass to Dragusin, which probably wasn't that necessary in the build-up to the second goal for Galatasaray, I thought he did okay, Davies. I don't think it was too much to have a go at him. Pedro Porro is a little bit more mixed. Looked a little bit exposed at times down his side. Didn't get forward too much, although he did towards the end with a really good kind of driven pass for Solanke to score. And they all had Fraser Forster behind them. Fraser Forster was just strange, kind of mixed performance. I had to do his player rating among my player ratings. Always makes me laugh when people like tell me whether my player ratings are right or wrong. They can't be right or wrong. They're subjective. How many times have we said this? I love it when people lecture me. I don't really. To be fair, I don't see it much, but on the other occasion when I do click on it, it's like, okay, thank you for that. They must think that their player ratings are right, but then they probably don't do player ratings. I don't know. But anyway, I was trying to think of a rating for Forster, and in my head I had 4. I had George next to me thought that he was around a 5-6, and then I asked another reporter who said he should be an 8 because of the amount of saves that he made for Spurs and stopped the score from being a ridiculous amount. And so that kind of just shows you 3 quite different views in the one moment. I think I went with, it was either 4 or 5 in the end. Because, look, he definitely deserves credit for the saves he makes. Absolutely. Because he did deny Osimhen a few times. And look, he came to this game having played very well against RZ as well. He did well in this one. But it was just, I kind of felt like first half he played pretty well. And there wasn't too much you could do about it. You could argue he could have come out a bit sooner. Maybe could have committed to the cross, but it was a brilliant Mertens cross. I don't think the goalkeeper's getting to that. And then the third one, the second one, it's a pretty good finish into the corner. I wouldn't think that too much. I actually felt second half when he didn't concede any. I actually thought he looked more shaky in the second half. Dropped the ball once from a cross. There was a couple of times when he parried saves back into the 6-yard box, and other people kind of had to bail him out and then swipe it away. The one where he dropped it from across, Bentancur made a really good block on the line. So yeah, his kicking was also really weirdly, wildly inconsistent. There was times when he was playing the ball really quickly against the press, and I thought it was excellent. He was doing his little short, sharp passes, and I was thinking, like, that's actually probably better than Vicario. And I remember saying this when he played, I can't remember what game it was, one of the early games he played for Spurs, and I remember thinking, he's actually quite good with his feet. But then there were other moments when he was just kind of quite wild with his kicking. And this is a trouble when I know some people cannot get on board the passing it out from the back thing. We always, and this is not meant to be patronising, but it does make us chuckle in the press box when we hear someone saying, just kick it out. Because that's, what are we, a year and a half now into the Postecoglou project era, whatever. They're not going to just hoof it out. And every time they do, it comes straight back at them, because that's what hoofing it out does. You're not stopping anything other than, look, a clearance in front of goal, fair enough. But if you're just going to get to the edge of your box and just whack it up the pitch, the percentages are, there's like 1% chance that someone is going to make something of that on your team. The more likely, the bigger likelihood is that ball's just going to come straight back and the pressure is going to continue to come upon you, which is why playing out from the back is scary to watch, but it gets behind and it creates space and it creates lines of attack. But yeah. Every time not every time, like I say, it was so mixed. It was just really weird. It was a very strange kicking. And Spurs have got themselves into this familiar situation, I guess it is, with the goalkeepers. A bit like what they used to have under Lloris, that they've got one clear first choice goalkeeper, Vicario. They've got one ageing backup who doesn't really fit the whole system as well, the high line particularly. And then it's been the same two kind of academy products, now 25, in Brandon Austin and Alfie Whiteman, as it has throughout the whole process, who look about as likely to get a game as you or I are. Forster got a new contract last year, which was kind of, I guess, a surprise in itself when you look at his, great character around the squad and everything, but does he actually suit the system? Maybe not. You'd maybe more likely have him as a third choice keeper. And Brandon Austin got a new 5-year deal at the end of last season. It kind of looked like, okay, so that means you're going to put him to be the second choice and Forster's going to be third. And it hasn't happened. And it kind of makes that deal a little bit like, was it really worth it for either party? I don't know. But look, Spurs are likely to sign a new goalkeeper. Whether it comes in the summer, and this is to challenge Vicario, whether it comes in the summer, whether it comes they push ahead if there's an opportunity and get them in January, I think it's got to happen. The winter window could really be a time for defensive reinforcements. We'll see whether that means a goalkeeper, whether that means a defender. We spoke about this last time, that, could be another left back, or is that going to be Jed Spence's role at the moment? Or there's the other issue, of course, is still the Europa League squad regulations, which we all love, don't we? Because you've got Jed Spence waiting to try and get a spot in the team if someone goes in January or isn't registered. You bring someone else in, that's another person that has to come out of the squad. I think you're allowed, is it up to 3 changes, I think, if they get through to the knockout stages. But look, you could, of course, just say, well, it doesn't matter, we need someone else for the Premier League squad, so it doesn't matter about the Europa League. And then we can have a big debate about who's left out. But with a goalkeeper, Forster doesn't count regardless. Austin and Whiteman do as homegrown. If you're bringing in, let's say, a foreign goalkeeper, or actually any goalkeeper, they're still going to have to be fitted in there. Or I also talk about leaders. We kind of touched on it earlier. This was another game for me when I just felt like the people you look to for the leadership weren't really providing it as much as we wanted them to. And look, Romero and Maddison are two vice-captains. Sonny, of course, is the captain. They've all provided moments of real leadership, I think, at points this season. Whether it's individually, they've kind of turned the game around, or whether it's collectively. It's been a few games where we've seen them all score or combine together, and they've kind of helped the team on. But there's also been the odd performance, and last night I felt was one of them, where you're just kind of thinking, where are the lead? We need someone on that pitch who's grabbing everyone else and the young players and just saying, just calm it, just calm, lads. You know, we're better than them. We don't have to kind of be like this and panicky. Romero we can excuse, of course, because he wasn't playing. Even Vicario's fourth member of the leadership squad, he wasn't involved at all. He's on the bench. Maddison I was disappointed with. I felt he was really off the pace yesterday. He kept trying when they work are fantastic. The swivel and turn in the centre of the pitch that gets him away from people. But I felt last night he was just telegraphing. It was so obvious every time he was going to do it. The only person that was getting away with them or doing them right was Kulusevski in the second half. I felt Maddison just kept trying it. I think there's only once I remember him getting away with the ball. And Sonny didn't have a great half. I mean, look, the whole team were absolutely pants in the first half. But his first half was a little bit reminiscent of the first half he had against Villa. And obviously we know what happened after that. So we don't know. Maybe if he kept him on, he would have an amazing couple of minutes at the start of the second half. But yeah, just... obviously he'd had no second half, Sonny. Maddison did. I don't think he really got much better. He's now struggling. You know, the whole talk was why is he not getting the England squad? And right now he's not getting in the Spurs starting 11. He's had some really good games this season. Of course, scored a lovely goal on Sunday. But he's not really making the case to Postecoglou right now for ousting Kulusevski or Sarr from the starting 11 in the Premier League games. I actually felt last night the leaders were those, kind of the leadership came off the bench. I felt Bentancur came on was brilliant. I thought he was really, really good. He was a real driving force for the 10 men. I thought Basuma, I know he didn't come off the bench, but I actually felt like he got better and better as the game wore on. The first half, it was really frustrating in that he'd do these really good things. He'd intercept the ball really well. And then his second or third touch would be so heavy and awful. And he'd kind of lose it again. It reminded me a little bit of, remember when Lucas Moura used to attack and he'd be like, there he goes, he's beating a man. And then he'd run straight into the second or third person. That's kind of what Basuma was doing with it. It may be he didn't have options to pass to, but I actually felt second half he got better and better, and he and Bentancur were really good together in the second half. Kulusevski, obviously been captaining Sweden recently, and I feel like he came on and kind of is adding a bit of a leadership now to the side, and I think his is more of a watch me, I'll break through this like a battering ram, follow me guys. He's that kind of leader, and it's just his body strength ridiculous what he does with the ball and the way he gets away from people. And when you've got 10 men, he is essentially like, he plays like two people, which is so helpful. And yeah, he almost got the equaliser as well, didn't he? I thought Sarr came on and brought kind of energy and legs to the party. Sometimes he was on the left, sometimes he was like a support striker who was all over the place. Solanke obviously came on and got another goal. Solanke, Postecoglou was saying today, I saw that he's kind of becoming a bit of a leader on the pitch for the team. He said, we're really happy with Dom, not just his goals, but his general play. The way he's come into the club, he's become a bit of a leader on the field. It's great for us. He's great for us, and I certainly believe there's more in him. So, you know my thoughts on Dominic Solanke. I think he's superb. And he's now got 8 goal involvements since joining Spurs. He's ruined my ability to say, because I was saying 7 goal involvements in 10 starts, but now he's scored coming off the bench. So I have to kind of say 8 goal involvements in all. Is it 6? Was it 6 goals and 2 assists? I think it is. But Postecoglou was asked last night, what was the reason for the really poor first half and the struggles? Was it the atmosphere? Was it his decision to change up the squad with 7 changes? Or was it just Galatasaray were very good? And he said, no, I don't think so. It's probably a combination of all those things. I just felt it was self-inflicted. We had real simple solutions out there to keep the ball. And as we showed with 10 men, it wasn't that difficult to do. We just didn't. Individuals within needed to be stronger on the ball and make sure we played the kind of football we tried to do every week, and we didn't do that. Maybe it was a little bit the changes I made and the environment or the atmosphere or whatever you want to call it, or the opposition. But the moments that stick out to me, and when there was no pressure on us and we're still giving the ball away, I think we need to be better in those moments, because if we're better in those moments, then you minimise the threat the opposition has, but also we get a foothold in the game in the areas we want to. We did it with 10 men. We were playing through them quite easily with 10 men, but with 11, we just didn't have anywhere near the conviction we needed, so it's disappointing. And on the topic of leaders, we've had some interesting words that have come from a former Spurs leader, Hugo Lloris. You might have seen, I think it was The Guardian have published an extract from his upcoming book, which I think is out in a few days' time. And yeah, it's an interesting piece. It's essentially the hook for the extract is it's focused on his disbelief when the Tottenham players were handed a free, I think it was Aviator, like a luxury watch ahead of the 2019 Champions League final. He was left aghast when he saw that the watches were all engraved with, I think it was Champions League finalist on it or something. He was mortified. Never wore his watch because he believed that, you need to aim higher. He's a World Cup winner. You don't celebrate on your watch having Champions League finalist. You wait until after. I get it. And he felt that the club and all that and the owners, like Daniel Levy, the chairman, were more excited about the fact they'd actually made a final than the fact that and their first ever European Cup final, Champions League final, than they were kind of had the winning mentality to go and then win it kind of thing. So I've got a few views on this. I'm going to deal with it in sections because I actually felt like the watch story was a bit like, it's a silly thing. Whereas I actually felt that a lot of what else Lloris said in the piece was really interesting and said probably more about the ambition or lack of and things like that we want to see on the pitch from Spurs, from the people that run the club. Because the whole watch thing, not a very relatable story, is it really, for 99% of people? Rich man expresses fury at free watch worth thousands of pounds because it does not convey the necessary ambition of his employers. So I'm speaking for myself. I have no idea what an Aviator watch costs, but I'm guessing it's thousands upon thousands and thousands of pounds. I don't think it was a story for the people. I agree, I guess, to an extent, if we're going to quibble about free luxury watches, that, the engraving was probably unnecessary. It's kind of one of those things that you maybe think non-football people have made that decision behind the scenes and thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have that for them? That'd be fantastic. They'd have their Champions League finalists. Brilliant. That's what we'll put on it. I don't know why they would speak like that. Just a weird accent. I don't even know what location they came from with that. Maybe just leave it blank, I guess. Or wait until after the final and put winners or losers on it. I don't know. Or maybe just not put anything on it. But look, let's be absolutely honest about this. Spurs players were not rubbish and really off the boil in that final because they were so upset at having received luxury watches with an engraving on it. They weren't. The referee did not make that really iffy early penalty decision against Sissoko because he was blinded by someone's luxury watch in the crowd and on the bench or whatever. It's like I said, that probably was the least insightful part for me of that extract. It was a good hook for it, and I think it got people into the story. But I actually felt what was in the rest of the story probably said more about the kind of the issues that he saw at the club. Because I think the point is Lloris's frustration in turn is Pochettino's frustration, because Lloris was essentially seen as part of the coaching staff. He was very close to Pochettino, probably still is, I'd imagine. Both in kind of got jobs in America now. And so for Lloris to be talking about his frustration at the inability of the club to take the next step, it kind of shows that was the inner feeling of the players and the club at the time. So, the players and the staff within the time to those at the top. Look, we've said this a million times. Spurs' time under Daniel Levy, the ownership model, ENIC, whatever you want to call it, huge improvements off the pitch. We've seen it with the stadium, the training ground, everything. Not huge improvements on it. It's there to be seen. I wouldn't even say it's just the one League Cup trophies. We want trophies, of course, but I would actually say it's more that lack of kind of ambition can be seen in terms of the lack of challenging in the league over the years, of really reaching any level other than those couple of years when Poch's team challenged. I think that's probably says even more than the trophies, because the trophies are, I know it's a cliche, but they are difficult to kind of achieve because of the amount of teams going for them. But you can consistently be a team battling high up the table. I think that's probably something that is more calibrated to what's being put into the club, maybe. And look, we've heard it from various managers over the club talking about the club just not going the extra mile when it came to securing the top transfer targets, maybe going for the second or third choices, or building stars rather than buying stars. And it's only really worked once thus far under Pochettino when they came close. But obviously there was that feeling within that they didn't have that extra shove then. When they got close, they didn't shove them just over the line. And yeah, I mean, you could say, is that the two transfer windows where they didn't sign anyone? Just when that would have come... What was that? That was the year... Yeah, because that was the year they were in the final, but that would have been on the back of challenging Chelsea for the title. I'm trying to remember my timeline now. So, yeah, that was the time when, you know, it's like, now. But obviously that is also the time, I guess, that they were moving into the stadium, and they will say that the finances maybe weren't available. I don't know. But still, I think everyone's going to look back at that as probably the sliding doors moment when the team felt it reached its peak because it wasn't getting changed. By the time they spent their money in 2019, they didn't sign the top targets. They signed second or third choice targets, who we now know have gone on to become very expensive flops for Tottenham. And then, of course, we had this weird period after Pochettino exited when the whole Tottenham model just like warped into this messy thing of, hey, we'll show ambition. Here's a win-now manager. Sorry, what's that? You need win-now players? No, sorry. We're going to give you project manager players. Honestly, that for me is probably one of the most irritating periods of Tottenham history. For all of the stuff it gave me to report on, it's just the period, that 5 years pretty much before Postecoglou came along, that just made the least sense in terms of an overall football club's direction. It's the one I'll always come back to. And now we've got Postecoglou, and there's this strange balance with him of, I do feel like they're trying to do the right thing while also sticking to a lot of the old habits as well. So, for instance, you've got Postecoglou asked for the striker he wanted, and he got the striker he wanted, and a big, ready-made, 27-year-old, £65 million striker, the most expensive transfer of the player signed in the Premier League last summer. So that's great. And you think, yeah, you did it, well done. And then it's like, but then the rest of the money was spent on teenagers. And look, these teenagers are very exciting players, could be terrific players for the club over the years. And Spurs have spent a fair bit in these three transfer windows under Postecoglou. But you kind of feel, especially with the teenagers, it's almost like smart investments rather than, I don't know, like rocket fuel that the club needs to propel forward. I don't know. So, yeah. So, while Lloris's whole watch story is maybe more like a visual aid that maybe doesn't prove as much as he thinks it does, it was the rest of his piece that kind of said a little bit more to me about the frustration. And I'm interested to see what the rest of it says, what the rest of his book says. I'll definitely give it a read. I'm hoping it gives insight into a club that we know it's always got really high expectations for the present and the people that are employed within it, whether that's the manager, the players, but always seems to be a club that actually is looking at the future rather than now itself, which is always this weird paradox. And look, you know, Levy said they're looking for new investment. How that changes things when that eventually comes in, we'll see. And in the meantime, they're kind of having to rely on Postecoglou, I guess, doing in a sense what Pochettino did, but maybe with a little bit more spent. I don't know, comparative. I think it probably is more spent. And yeah, you know, I guess if he can build a young squad with a strong identity that can kind of get going, the big test will be, okay, we're going to get close this time. Are you going to make up for what you didn't do last time in terms of Levy, the owners, whatever. We'll see. That'll be the test, I guess. Yeah, so Lloris' stuff. I wasn't buying all the stuff about free, expensive watches, and some might point out that the club kind of stuck by him, of course, through some difficult on the pitch and off the pitch stuff as well. But absolutely, definitely, you can understand. I think there'll be more players from that group of the Pochettino era that will talk about the pain of coming so close and not being able to push on because the club maybe just didn't share that same ambition to get there that quickly, or felt they were able to get there that quickly. We'll see. But it's going to be a kind of a bone of contention until Spurs win something or have a sustained period of success. And there's more stuff at 10:30. Keep an eye on my Twitter feed because there's more stuff that comes from Postecoglou, who spoke about it a little bit extra. There was some stuff in the live section which I can say he was asked about the Lloris stuff. He said, I haven't read what Hugo said. It's been mentioned to me. I think with these things, you've got to put context around them and understand the broader view. And that could have been a very successful period for the club. They came very, very close. You're talking about finishing runners-up in the Premier League and runners-up in the Champions League. It could have been a very different era. And maybe in retrospect, you'd be looking at those things. It's easy to focus on the negatives when the outcome is not what you want. There's obviously a lot right at the time. From my perspective, I've never allowed anyone else to dictate my ambitions, my aims, or what I try to do with everyone. What I do with everyone around me is you don't put a limit on what you can achieve because if you do, potentially you might miss something that comes along your way. From the moment I started, there's been a pretty clear brief about what we want to achieve. That's kind of what we're working towards. So we'll see. But like I said, there's a little bit more that's coming at 10:30 tonight. I guess the challenge now lies with Postecoglou. And time will tell whether he can cross that line that so many of his predecessors, his very dispensable predecessors who have been the fall guys, have not been able to cross that line. Can he be the man that does? Maybe we can hold off on the watch engraving and just dare to do that instead of watch engraving. So I think that's everything really. Obviously we've got Ipswich on Sunday, 2:00 kickoff. Looks like it's pretty much going to be the same group of players, barring maybe Romero coming back. Don't know what that means for the bench and whether one of these young players, you'd think if Romero's not back, then Dorrington probably gets. Oh, sorry, Jed Spence comes into play, doesn't he? Okay, yeah, you got Jed Spence can come in as well. I don't know if would he play him instead of Porro because Porro's played again. You could end up playing a doggy in Spence. Never know. If you're going to start him in a game, then why not? A couple of days after. If it depends fitness-wise where he's at because he hasn't got minutes in a little while, has Jed. I mean, he signed that new contract. I don't think he's played yet, has he, since then? But there you go. Right, time to go. I'm going to go and adjust my body to it being very much later than it probably is right now. Yes, it is in my head. Right, so I think we covered pretty much everything from that. Hopefully people aren't too down about the result. It wasn't a good performance, but it was a game that it's kind of had a funny feeling there wasn't going to be much kind of to come out of it in terms of an amazing performance. I think all eyes were going to kind of be on Sunday, but they got to win it now. If they then on Sunday put in a lackluster Palace-style performance, then it's going to be a complete waste of all of that happened on Thursday. And that's a very Tottenham thing to do. But if they go on Sunday, play well, get a really good result, then suddenly, finally, an international break will be entered with a bit of positivity and me to be able to write some nice stuff rather than moaning about what went wrong. Hopefully they do that. Please, Spurs, please. Because they've been a bit Dr. Tottenham, haven't they, among some of the teams that have been struggling for a little bit of form. But Ipswich, former Spurs boy, Spurs boy, Kieran McKenna, very good manager, and they're going to be no pushovers at all. They've given some teams some problems this season, and Spurs are going to have to be at their best. And you would think it goes back to Sean Solanke Johnson, Kulusevski, Bentancur, Sarr, and then probably a Doggy Porro if Romero's fit, and maybe Dragusin with him. If not, Dragusin and Davies again. But yeah, and the Vicario and goal. I do wonder whether Jed Spence would be fit enough to come in or not. That'd be interesting. It'd be a big kind of pat on the back for him, and it would be another fresh body in that squad as well. But right, time to head off. We'll be back on Monday, probably Monday evening, to have a chat about Sunday's game. Hopefully we've got good stuff to talk about. I don't want to talk about defeat. There haven't been too many of them. You know, this was only the third in the last, we're up to 12 matches, but I don't want another one, please, ever again. Right, time to head off. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.